Welcome back to the Sharon Fitzmaurice podcast, where we celebrate the resilience of the human spirit. A beautiful guest today that I am delighted to say I know in person, which is hard sometimes when you're chatting to so many people over all of the episodes I've covered in 5 years. So to know my beautiful guest in person is truly a gift. Mother of four, TEDx speaker and author, Dr. Siobhán Keenan Fitzgerald has been working in the field of education for 33 years. She is currently teaching principal of DCU Changemaker School in Galway, Ireland. Siobhán is passionate about helping all young people develop their communication and public speaking skills. And she is the creator of the Let's Stand public speaking program for young people aged 5 to 18. Through enabling and empowering children and teenagers to find and use their voice, Siobhán's vision is to empower students from all backgrounds to share their stories, becoming change makers and the best versions of themselves. Siobhán, you are very welcome.
Thank you so much, Sharon, and it's absolutely a pleasure to talk to you as always.
Oh, I love that. Even though I had read your bio and I know you, as I was reading it out, what flew through my mind was, I wish I had a Siobhán when I was younger.
How lovely. Well, I think, Sharon, I think I did have a Siobhan when I
Mm.
was younger. If I'm getting what you mean by a Siobhan
Yes.
right. And actually, my Siobhan was probably my mother
Mm.
because, going right back to my own childhood, and my mother's name was Joan. So I think she actually called me after herself, which is Siobhan in English. But part of the reason you said there in the opening that I'm passionate about empowering young people to find their voice. And I suppose part of the deep reason behind that, which, I've come to know the more I've analyzed why I do what I do,
Yeah.
is that I didn't find it easy as a child to express myself. I knew I had a particular struggle, but my mother was really unbelievable when I think back to the time, because it was quite a while ago, but she was great for encouraging us to just speak up in different situations. She'd some great sayings that, have stayed with me over the years because she sadly passed away while I was still quite young.
Mm.
But one of her sayings that comes to mind from time to time is walk tall, walk straight, and look the world right in the eye. And she
Ah,
said it to us over and over again. So it kind of became ingrained in us. But she used to do this one thing, and I don't know, is it an Irish tradition? Perhaps you might have done it in your own household, but so she was a stay-at-home mother, even though I think if she lived today, she'd probably like to work outside the home. But she's seven children, so one thing she used to do was when relatives or neighbors would come and visit our house when we were younger, she'd always make sure each one of us got to do a little party piece. And we had, a small house. We lived in a council house, and we had a small little fridge, but the fridge was our stage. So she'd say, Mike, stand up in front of the stage there now, or in front of the fridge and sing a song. Mike would sing a song. Francis, stand up and sing a song. Francis would sing a song. Agnes, stand up and sing a song. And Brendan and Johnny and Donal, stand up and sing a song. And Siobhan, you'll stand up and say a poem. And when I tell this story to people, they sometimes say, does that mean you can't sing? And I say, well, maybe she knew something that I didn't know, but I actually took that message in a very positive way. I took it to mean that I was really good at saying poems
mm.
and that that mattered. And I suppose even it might sound strange, but that little bit of encouragement actually really inspired and motivated me at school to learn more poems so that I could go home, say more in front of her and her friends. And you'd always get some positive feedback about it. They were always great for saying, oh, you've a great voice, or I love the way you said that, or whatever. So that was just something, that's where it all kind of started. But I was very conscious. I blush very easily from a very young age. I don't know why. It's a feature of me. I've
Mm.
learned in recent years there's a name for it. It's called erythrophobia, a fear of blushing. So I've carried that with me throughout my whole life. And I suppose it's always it's always been a little bit of a barrier to expressing myself because when you know at a deep level that there's a strong chance if you put your hand up, if you stand up or try to stand out in any way and you're going to blush. The thing is, so many people they draw attention to it. That doesn't help, by the way. But in the school context, in the classroom, if I was asked to answer a question and I started to blush, of course I knew I was blushing. But when I was thinking that I was saying something important, often what classmates and sometimes teacher would come back with is, "You're blushing. What's wrong?" And straight away, that's so deflating and really takes away from what it is that you were saying. So I think because of all of that, because of the inspiration of my mother, and also just because of those challenges that I felt in a very embodied way as a child, it kind of has given me more more drive to help empower others to be able to get beyond that. Because even in spite of knowing that I blush, and in spite also of being a very, very shy child, I always deeply felt, I don't know if this is something you would have experienced, Sharon, I always deeply felt that I had something to say and something unique that if I didn't say it, nobody else could say it for me. And I don't know where that comes from, but I just know I had it.
Oh, that's beautiful, Siobhan. I can connect in on so many of those things with you. Not losing my mother. I'm grateful my mother is still present with me. And the party pieces, yes, when visitors would come, we had to sing a song. There was like you, there were certain ones that were singers, and some of us had to dance, all of those things, mortified we were a lot of the time. I didn't feel like I was brilliant. I just felt like we were a bit on show. But then again, I had a different background. And the blushing, absolutely, I can connect on that as well. And so many things you were saying, I'm like, oh my goodness, yeah. And the more they draw attention to, the more you blush. So for me, I knew it was kind of an anxiety-based, physical, representation of that fear of being asked. But for me, it was about, again, and we went back to that little conversation we had before we pressed record. It's the fear of judgment or not being good enough or being seen, but wanting to be seen at the same time for all the right reasons, but not for the blushing.
Mm,
And it's something now that I've kind of worked through, Siobhan, like you, is that if I feel that anxiety or that blushing, rising up within me, I mean, I've been going through the menopause for years, so I can blame it on that now. It's great. But I would kind of just breathe through it and say, it's okay, you're safe. I had to keep reminding myself I was safe, no matter what the outcome was. It wasn't to
mm,
think about the outcome. So, yeah, many of those things. And I loved what you said. That's what I said, even in your first opening, lines to us, there's so much in it that knowing you have something important to say, something unique inside of you, even as a child. I think many children have that. And again, I know we've had this conversation about, this is what you have to learn, this is the homework you have to do. We're not kind of seen to look outside the box, or we weren't encouraged. Creativity I see now is at a low in our children and young teenagers. And there is so many outside stuff coming in on top of our little brains of the children and teenagers, and even as adults now, that where do you even start? But the one thing I love about what you're doing and have done is because of your passion, because of your own background, you decided to use your voice and do something about it to help others. And that's your unique purpose up until this moment, because I know you're going to go and create more.
mhm.
So, what was it inside of you, apart from the passion, that belief you had something special to offer? Where then did the other little seeds come from that you, again, through your own experience, personal and professional,
Mm.
when did it kind of say, I need to grow this further?
Well, Yeah, I think it was a combination of personal and professional experience, Sharon. I know definitely around 2014, 2015, I'd always had that interest in public speaking myself. So I was doing that personally myself because I do think it's really empowering as a means of communication, and also because I'd begun my leadership journey at school. But I was a school principal at the time, and one thing that really struck me, I was teaching in a DEIS school, so a school that caters for children from disadvantaged backgrounds. And it became so evident and clear to me that an area that we needed to work on was oral language. And when we started to explore oral language a little bit more, I thought, even I saw difficulties in basic communication, in conversations, in being able to hold a conversation and maintain eye contact and, ask the right questions and engage people. And then I thought the children were developing a real interest in technology, and they were playing around a lot with PowerPoint. They loved doing projects on PowerPoint. But I remember one day some of the children, they handed me the laptop and they said, look, there's my project. And they'd done amazing things, like they'd all these animations and all the rest. And I said, that's lovely, but no, you present it to me. Tell me about it. And they were horrified. And I thought, they don't have that. They don't have any of those skills. But yet, I actually taught a lot of kids from the traveling community. And I was aware that within their culture, they do have a strong storytelling tradition. So there was something in me that thought they can do this, they can do this, and they can do better. They just haven't had the experience. So we began public speaking then in the school, and it was like step by step because I looked for some programs that might help me, and I couldn't find any. So that's why I began to design the Let's Stand program. And that was kind of based on all of my own experience to date, and also what I'd gleaned myself from being a member of Toastmasters. So I started that program, and it was one lesson plan at a time, one step at a time. But what I began to see, Sharon, was just transformative for me as a teacher, but also I think for the children, because it really began to engage them and motivate them more in their education. Because when you think about it, you can ask children and encourage children to present on anything from across the curriculum. If the focus is on just developing the skills, they can present on something from history, geography, from what they did yesterday, what they had for dinner. It doesn't matter, but it really connects the learning to the individual child. And I still am fascinated by this, that you can give a class of children exactly the same title for a presentation, and no two presentations will be anywhere close to the same, because it's that unique ability to be able to bring themselves to it, to bring their learning, their experience, their life so far. So I loved that about it, and we were constantly surprised by what the kids came out with. So what I began to do then, because I was the principal and I suppose I was in a position where I could do this, I wanted to kind of spread the message gently to the other teachers, because you don't want to put something on them that's kind of like, oh, what next?
Mm.
So I started to get some of the kids who were very comfortable with it very quickly to present at school assemblies. And in that way, it showed the other teachers, it showed the younger kids what was possible. And more younger kids wanted to do it as well. I'll never forget going into the junior room in the school some years ago. There was this tiny little girl. I'd say I'm not that big myself, but she was probably up to about my waist at the time. And she said, do you want to see my presentation about hats? And we come from where we live, our school is not that far away from Ahascra, which is home of the famous milliner, Philip Tracy. So we were doing a few projects in the school about him and his life and about hat making and all of that. But she went through slide by slide at age 6, how to make a hat and ideas for making a hat. But the amount, apart from the confidence, the structure, the eye contact, the engaging with the audience, apart from all of that, the language, the rich language she was using, she was learning. And within all of that, there's not just the benefit to the speaker or the person speaking, but we know from research that children are more likely to listen to their peers than
Mm.
to us as either parents or as teachers or whatever. So once we started on the journey, and I suppose this is the thing I would think about starting on any journey, you might have experienced it, Sharon. You don't know fully what all the outcomes are going to be or what it's going to lead to, but it's about starting, taking the first step, and then all of these little rabbit holes or all of these
Yeah.
different avenues began to open up. But and it's like that to this day. It's still expanding, still growing. Yeah, and I've always been amazed. Even we were able to embed it, embed it then more in the whole life of the school. We began to give students the opportunity of leading assembly because we started to think maybe we need to look at opportunities where it's usually the teacher or the principal speaking and think, well, actually, is that something the students can do? Because it's their education, it's not ours. If we just step back a little bit, give the floor to them and encourage them. And so we started to do that, but also graduation speeches now are a feature of our graduation ceremony. And that's a very meaningful and real world experience of, why we make speeches, why we make presentations. But now it's so much a feature of our school that this year's sixth class will know from the time they're in junior infants, oh, I'm going to be doing one of those someday. And they're gathering the memories already of, because basically it's a very simple structure. The graduation speech is my memories of primary school and what moving on to secondary school means to me. So basically, it gives them that opportunity to, to connect with their favorite parts of primary school, maybe the funny things, their favorite teachers, whatever it is. But then also, kind of as part of the transition program to secondary school, they begin to anticipate what they're looking forward to. Because a lot of the time, there is that anxiety maybe around going forward.
Mm.
But if we intentionally place the emphasis on what are the good things, what are you looking forward to? And for some, it could be, the uniform, it could be moving into a bigger classroom, whatever. So, yeah, that's a little bit about where
Yeah.
we're at and why it started and developed.
Brilliant. And I love even that the encouragement of children to speak. And as you said, that their peers learn more from listening to their peers. And even that presentation of like the foundation of those memories, holding on to them, the good things and the funny things, but even that anticipation, as you said, of going into secondary school, because maybe there's another person in that class that thought, oh God, yeah, I never thought about that for going, when they're listening to their peer and they're going, God, I never thought about that going into secondary school. So it's landing more little kind of insights into their own brains about what to expect instead of the fear aspects which a lot of children are taught, about going in. And again, from maybe somebody that has gone in the year before them and they start treating them like babies once again, once they go into secondary school. But I
Mm,
think it's going in, that's always for me is building that foundation within them, isn't it? When
yeah.
you also did your TEDx talks, um, huge everything again that you said, Siobhan, in it, in so many ways. Part of my child self, was listening, not just the adult self. And that, like, what is the purpose of education? The importance of oral language development, encouraging every child to talk, to stand up and stand out. I was in my head going, I was never encouraged to do any of that. I was never asked to stand up and speak. I was told to shut up a lot of times. Um,
Mm,
that was, and unfortunately, they are my memories of
mm,
school. And I always said I would hate to go back to school and relive all of that again. I wish I had a different memory to share about school. And I
mm,
think I shared this with you. I have two children, obviously grown up now, and my eldest, he didn't really take to, writing all the time and being told to do all the exercises. But what he did take to was listening. listening to the stories the teachers would share, his friends would share. Again, they might be talking about after the summer holidays where they went, all of those things, and that shared story. He used to come home and share all of the stories the teachers shared with him. He
Mm,
remembered every single word. He was even, descriptive in his body language,
mm,
everything. But when it came to with what did you read today, he said, I can't remember
mm,
you
mm.
know, and
Yeah.
again, that toll, not encouraged to speak up. And I think I've said this too. And he was never, even when he did try, he was never, congratulated. I don't want to use that word, but it
Mm,
was never encouraged, even if it's wrong, you still
mm,
participated. And my second child was all about play and creativity, and he felt like that was knocked out of them because of, having to sit, having to do this, and that they didn't get enough time to play. Again, that recreational side of things that helps them develop. So that was my experience as a mother watching two children, the next generation. So I'm like, what is it like now? And I know when we've had conversation on our walks that you're again talking about the changes you're trying to encourage in the education system. Because if we go back to what is the purpose of education? I know that's a big question, but what
mm.
is the purpose of education these days?
My ideal, my ideal are, well, I still believe and I'm always hopeful and I always think, our main responsibility as change makers is to make a change within that little space that we're living in every day. That's within everybody's power. And that's what I believe a change maker is to implement change where you are. Because sometimes if you focus on too much, you get nothing done. But I would say that the purpose of education, and I hope we translate this because it's certainly something we try to do in our school, is to empower, enable, encourage, and empower every child to become the best version of themselves, nobody else, themselves. And I do believe that developing communication, public speaking skills is key and integral to that. And child voice, say, for example, my book, Listen, How Child and Student Voice Can Change the World. That book was kind of prompted part by my own studies, but also just again by my lived experience as a teacher and as a parent, um, and connected to public speaking. I suppose when we started to give children the opportunity to speak and also to have that choice in what they spoke about. There were times when they chose the theme or the variation of the theme or whatever. Um, when we started doing more of that, honestly, we were blown away by what they would tell us, what they would say that we hadn't a clue about.
Mm.
And I thought, how many times as a teacher, as a parent, do I assume that I know what's going on in the hearts and the minds of my students or my children? And I think that's a question that is worth asking if you are a teacher or if you are a parent, just standing back and think, do on a daily basis, what do I assume? And even thinking about that kind of made me realize I just need to stop talking a little bit more when I'm around the kids. I really
Mm.
need to stop talking because it's not possible to talk and listen at the same time. It's just not biologically possible. So if you are listening, your mouth is closed and you might be focusing with your eyes. There's other ways that your body is showing that it's listening, but it's that whole thing that we don't know what's going on in anybody else's life if we don't listen. But I became through my studies, this kind of shocked me a bit. I think I always knew about it, I suppose, as a teacher. It was mentioned about child voice and children's right to have a say in matters that affect their lives. But that's enshrined in law. And I thought, why wasn't that kind of drilled home more to us, even when we were in teacher training college? Because if you think about it, if they have that right to have a say in matters that affect their lives, well, education is one of the biggest matters that affect their lives.
Mhm.
Where are they getting that voice? And by voice, do we mean, having a say via a survey or expressing their voice in some other way? But I thought, yeah, you can talk about that, but you should not and cannot ignore their physical voice,
Mm.
how they articulate themselves. And if we say to them, okay, you have a voice, you tell me what you think. Now, Sharon, you would know, I'd say, from all your experience in counseling and everything, you don't just expect somebody to open up like that without a relationship, and especially for children, without having spent the time on helping them develop the skills. It's after they develop the skills, then you can go to them with some of these big questions about education or whatever and get their views. But I find that it's almost manipulative
Mm.
or tokenistic. If you're asking for their feedback or you're asking for their voice and you haven't put the time, attention, effort into helping them develop the skills, I think my mind thinks in images, and I often thought it's a little bit like if you give a child a guitar and you say to them, here's a guitar, I'd love to hear you play it. And you sit and you wait for them to play and you think, and then they're not playing and you realize, well, I never taught them how to.
Mm.
And I think that's similar with our voice, even though I think there can be the propensity to take it for granted that because we can speak, because we have a voice, that we actually know how to use it, that we can speak well. And that's not the case. I'm sure, like, I know lots of people who will talk, 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 talk in a one-to-one situation, but don't ask them to speak in public. They're like, no. Or, you can talk for a long time without saying very much, but
Mm.
speaking well and making every word count or having an impact, it's a specific set of skills, and we can't expect anybody to be able to do that in the school context if we haven't put time, effort, and value into it.
Yeah, I love that because you're not just teaching them to use their voice, you're teaching them to trust what they feel inside of themselves. You're teaching them to feel safe about expressing who they are in that moment to
Mm.
whoever is in the room. You're teaching them that, again, their voice is important, that they matter in the world and they have a purpose. Because one of the things I feel so strongly about, again, because of my own background, is that every child wants to be seen and heard. Of course, we were taught one time, to be seen but not heard. And, that might have been the case in school or at home or in society in general. And now children are not seen or heard because many times they're at a device or they're, and I think you shared that even on your TEDx talk, in your own family from your own personal experience about your daughter in the toy room and all the individuals were on a phone
Mm.
laughing. And that is the case for so many people. And just even their young children, but even their adolescents, they friends over and there's no talking. It's just up in the room on their devices, and it's so strange to us because we haven't experienced it. But if we then don't, as the adults, encourage, excuse me, those young children to have a safe place to be able to use their voice. As you said, how are they ever going to learn that skill? And they shouldn't be expected then to go off to college, do presentations, go into a job interview, give a presentation to a client. They won't be able to. They'll balk. The anxiety levels, the stress
Mm.
levels about presentation. Oh my God, I have to do one on Friday. Again, I come back to, for me, having learned this through my own work, is that you're sharing the information that you know in your unique way. It doesn't always have to be perfect, but what you want to say, and you know what people want to hear. But also, just that very important part you said, it's the listening to what other people want to hear from you as well. So everything you're saying, it actually stands for children, but adults as well, that we need to listen. And
Mm.
I've always said that when I'm listening to a conversation, just I'm in conversation, I'm listening to the other person. For me, it's like my brain fires all these neurons, all these things start going off because then I know I am so in tune with this person. So can you imagine a child? sitting listening to another child. It's like
Mm,
fireworks going off in their brain and their energy going, oh, I love listening to Sean or Mary or whatever her name
mm,
is speaking because they talked about what they did in the summer and the games they play and oh my God, and they read this book and you know what happened in it, Mammy, and wait till
mm.
I tell you, that is huge learning. That's me in a personal. I get excited even thinking about children getting excited about listening to other people's experiences. What has stopped us or what has halted Siobhan? Just as you said, we need to stop talking and start listening. Why are people listening less?
Well, everything that you said there is exactly what I've seen,
Mm,
Sharon, with regard to what is possible, the possibilities, and that's what excites me about this. Because even what you said there in terms of how excited they get listening to each other, there is that for sure. But what that does also is it really builds the skills of empathy. It
mm,
helps them understand, connect deeply with one another. And just before I go on to answer your question, it struck me as well when you said about children being seen and not heard. Yes, that was the Ireland we grew up in. And really, what I think needs to be said is what happened in that Ireland when children weren't seen and weren't heard? Did it lead to anything good? Absolutely not. In fact, it led to a lot of harm because children having a voice, there's an element within that as well of protection.
mm,
They're they what you would hope, and I really believe it would be true from what I've seen so far, that if they can be empowered to speak up for themselves in different situations, well, that's what you want them to be able to do when they're being bullied, when they're being asked to do something they don't want to do or they don't want to engage in. So there's that protection element as well. But you were asking, Sharon, what is kind of standing in the way of developing those communication skills? Well, I think in society, and I suppose school is connected to this, obviously technology. There's a
mm,
huge part to play. And when I started developing the public speaking program, again, I told you it was because I was concerned. I was concerned about the poor communication skills I was seeing at school. And thank God, I thank God, I'm so grateful. And I know you've always taught me the benefit of
mm,
gratitude and all of that. Um, I'm so grateful that I grew up at the time that I grew up and having seven siblings in the family, we weren't taught to communicate. We just did it every day in every situation. We had to communicate,
mm,
to negotiate with one another, to tell stories, to ask questions, to wind each other up. It was part of our lives, so much a part of our lives. But that's not the case nowadays because families are smaller, kids don't have as many siblings, they don't have as much face-to-face interaction with their parents. I'm sorry if parents are
mm,
upset by that, but it's the truth. And they don't have the opportunities, and they're so drawn now to social media, to computers, to iPads, and even that, it's a bit of a challenge for schools at the moment because we are receiving funding for IT and to make sure we have enough iPads and all the rest available. But more and more I'm finding, and I suppose as I reflect on it, and I hear other teachers and principals begin to reflect on this as well, it's not more of that we need because they're having that when they go home. They're having that when they go outside, leave the school in the evening. We are so lucky where we are. We have a huge field at the back of the school. And I keep encouraging the teachers, and I try and do it as myself as much as possible, is get the children outside, get them outside. I remember some years ago, one child did a speech. She was in fourth class at the time about what would we do if all the trees in our town were cut down. So that was the theme, the title. And I'll never forget. There were times when I would be listening to their speeches, and I'm not joking, Sharon. They would say something, a punchline or something that would just go straight to my heart. The tears would come, and they would kind of stop in their tracks thinking, are you okay? Did I say something wrong?
yeah,
But I'd
yeah.
say, that's the power of your words. That's the power of your message. You're connecting with me. But how this child connected with me, her final line, I never forget it. She said, she was lamenting the possibility of all the trees being cut down. And she said, some people might say they have to be cut down so that we can have more Wi-Fi. But she said, you'll never get the same connection as you will with trees.
Mm.
And that made me cry, because I just thought she gets it. Like and I don't know, she probably got that line off the internet or something. Fair enough. But to be able to use it and to be able to speak it to us, for us to be able to hear it and absorb it and think about it and reflect on it, I think over time what we will see, and I'm hopeful that we will see, is schools putting a little bit less of an emphasis on IT. Now, it is important, of course, to be able to teach children how to use technology wisely, so they're the master of it and not mastered by it. But apart from that, we know they have phones. We know some of them have iPads. They have their games. They will never have their childhood again. They will never have this time when they can connect with each other, connect with themselves,
Mm.
and connect with nature. And I suppose that's why I'm really excited about the next phase of my work, which I'll talk a little
Yeah,
bit about later.
yeah, I love it. There's a little bit of sadness, when you're sharing that as a teacher and you're a parent also. And I see the lack of interaction. And again, it's not just with children and teenagers, it's now in adults, that if you're standing even at a bus stop, nobody looks up to say hello or isn't, even though we might just talk about the weather, they're all looking down at phones. It's like we completely want to disconnect from everyone around us unless we know them. And for me, it's that I remember even as a child, say hello to somebody walking down the street, and have some manners. And now I do it without thinking because that's just because I think everyone should be talking to everybody. Anyway, Siobhán, that you see me when we go on walks, I say good morning or good afternoon to everybody because again, that part of me is like everyone is valuable in the world and everybody should be seen. And we mightn't have a conversation with them, but to let them know in that moment that I saw you as you passed today, good morning on this lovely day or whatever it is. And you usually say, isn't it a beautiful day? Again, the Irish coming back to the weather. But I think of the importance of children. And that's why I said at the start, I wish I had a Siobhán. I wish that when I was in school, I've shivers on my body because I think the importance of teachers is so underrated. And I spoke to you about this before. Like there is so much stress for teachers in schools also now, and they've become a lot like social workers as well. But to come back to that really important thing of allowing a child to be seen and heard, that whatever they have to share is so important in that moment or in the world. And I know
Mm,
we spoke about this, and you could be the change maker that
mm,
creates that change within that young child's belief about themselves, and that it could be possible for me to go out into the world and make a difference. It could be possible for me to go and live my dreams. It could be possible for me to become the president of Ireland or whatever I want to be. If somebody sees that little spark within all of us, Siobhán,
mm,
they ignite it by listening, noticing, encouraging. And to me, they are the most important attributes that we all have inside of us, and they are free. And on a daily basis, if we can't, not just talking about our children, but give them to each other, I think humanity is suffering quite a lot.
mm,
And our children, how can we expect more of them
mm.
when we're not doing it ourselves on a daily basis?
Yeah, that's powerful, Sharon, and it's so true. And I think we often talk in education circles about the importance of one good adult in a child's life. And I think you were kind of alluding to that. But in terms of like listening, noticing, and encouraging, I I wish every teacher realized and knew the powerful impact that they have on children's lives. Because we know now as adults, and any adult I speak to will tell me something about a teacher that messed up their life, basically. It could have been with one word, one look, one, dismissive remark, and equally, one teacher that has turned their whole life around. With, again, it could be one word, one look, one encouraging remark. So it's the simple things. And I think in general in my own life recently, I'd love to hear if it's similar for yourself, Sharon, but I think it's the age and stage I'm getting to, but I'm starting to realize that getting, I get more done by doing less, if that makes
Mm,
sense. And
yes.
sometimes I think this is what we need to do in the classroom as well, because yes, there are so many different initiatives. Yes, there's so much coming at us, but we still have agency. Teachers have agency to choose to a certain degree what happens in the four walls of their classroom or outside, which I'd prefer, the outdoor classroom. So they have that agency, but it's up to them whether they use it or not. And to be able to, we're professionals. So we need to be able to stand up and say, well, I'm doing this right now in my classroom because this makes sense in this context for this particular group of students in front of me. And so what? If we're going to spend 3 days a week outdoors, I know it appeals to their interests. I know we're still covering literacy and numeracy and everything else out there, but it makes sense. And teachers know this. But I think not to give their power away to external forces who may just, whether it be inspectors or whoever else, who may just visit the school from time to time and don't know the children. The ultimate thing is, do we know the child? Who is the child? And connecting with that individual child. And I just love the idea. Something that transformed my own teaching again was at one stage I was doing a course in mindfulness. I don't know if it was with yourself, Sharon, or somebody else, but I thought I want to try this out on a daily basis with the children. And I thought, if every child that comes up to my desk, if I can like truly tune in, tune out everything else, tune into them for 30 seconds, 30 seconds to a minute, and ask them something about their day, listen to them, look at them, notice them, acknowledge them. I really believe that will make a difference in their lives. And if you can do that for every child in your class, okay, so if you have 30 children, that's 30 minutes. But at the same time, you can be checking their reading, you can be doing something else. I don't think it's unachievable, but I think it's something that has the power to change the world, to have that huge impact. Because again, it's reinforcing. You might be the only adult in that day that they've had a connection with, because they might have been rushed out to school. There might be something worrying going on with their parents at home, who knows, whatever. But you might be the only adult that has noticed them that day. And unfortunately, in some cases, you might be the only adult who has noticed or paid attention to them in that week.
Yeah, oh, take a deep breath because again, I feel for every one of those children, I really do because I know what it's like to feel that alone and not seen. And it's a not a very nice place, but you grow with that into your adolescence and adulthood. And that's why, again, I emphasize this is not just for teachers and parents, but for all of society, for humanity to remember we need that connection. We need that interaction with each other. And if you didn't receive it as a child, who do you feel safe speaking to now? But how can we
Mm.
teach our children? That's why I love what you're doing because you are empowering them. But we're going on to your best work so far. I think all of your work is the best work. I think you're just adding layers of amazingness on top of it all. A series of children's books on wondrous well-being and empowering adventures in the woods. This series is called Adventures in Quilcam. Is that right?
Yeah, that's it. I'm very excited about it, Sharon, because I think this is a little bit of everything I am and have done in my life so far. And I'm so happy to be able to put it into a series of children's books. It's fiction, they're children's readers, and I I didn't grow up a wild child, but I grew up in nature to a large degree, seven
Yeah.
children. And I think this is the story I hear from many Irish people my age. Um, we grew up outside. My mother was delighted to kind of release us into the fields, let us go and come back when it's dark. These were on the days we didn't have school, but we would go and the adventures, the picnics, the we would climb trees. Oh my goodness, when I think of some of the tricks and the tumbles that we were doing on trees, I'm sure my parents would have definitely had a heart attack if they'd known. But I find it amazing that we're all still alive. We all survived it. We all survived that physical things. It was always how high can you climb? Can you cross from one tree to the next?
Mm,
And what was really interesting was when I think back, we never thought that anything bad would happen.
no.
It never crossed our minds that we couldn't do it. So when you think about building confidence, building resilience, having that even perception of your own body and your abilities and what you can do, I think it was such an idyllic childhood. And I would just love, I suppose it's part of why I have this interest in the outdoors now, but I've also done some courses on, how much we can learn outside, how
Mm,
much the children can do outside, how much of the curriculum can be covered outside. So now I suppose I have a bit of a drive towards moving children's education as much as possible outdoors, but also I'm very conscious, and this worries me, I suppose, to some degree as a parent. We constantly hear about the debt and the serious burden that our generation are passing on to our
mm,
children, in terms of having to look after the earth, having to look after the environment. And when it's presented in that kind of a way, oh my God, it's dark, it's
mm,
dreary. I feel such guilt as a parent. I worry about my kids. But then when I take a step back from that, I think it's a David Attenborough quote, or it might be somebody else, so it's kind of a paraphrase. Came across this quote and they said, we can't expect children to care for what they haven't experienced or
mm.
had a childhood in.
Yes.
And that worried me because I thought, yes, it may be a fact that the children will have to look after the environment, today's children, but at least let them have adventures, fun, the opportunity to connect with nature. Because I honestly believe, and I've experienced it on our walks, and I love the walks that we go on together, Sharon, because
Mm,
they're really in nature. You get such a strong sense of well-being.
mm,
Even just breathing in the air, having the chats, going at your own pace. There's so much to it, but I think I really, really want children to have that experience. So throughout the series of books, as you mentioned, so their well-being adventures that they go on and they face different challenges in the company of their friends. I wanted to kind of shine a light again on how children are more than capable of solving a lot of their own problems if they're given the space and the trust. And I know that to be true because I've seen it in kids, but I experienced it as a child.
mm.
Our parents to this day don't know some of what we
I
solved.
know.
And I hope they never find out. But but we did it. We did it because like we were like warriors. We took on all these fantasy characters when we were out in the woods or out in the fields. Does that sound bizarre, Sharon, or does that connect with anything
Oh,
from
it does. Imagination, freedom, just as you said, developing skills, and learning to communicate with each other, even as children, not realizing, even because you had seven in the family and sent off, and that time we did have the freedom. And there was nothing. I mean, there was a tree and there was stones and sticks, and we created so much from those few things in nature and running and a cow might chase you or whatever, hoping it wasn't a bull, all of these things. And I hear stories from my mother about the times they spent and the bull would chase them and hiding under a cock of hay and all of those things. And I do see it now where children don't have that access to freedom, or we don't believe they have that access to freedom. But just as you mentioned there, our children. being told, here you are, here's the earth now, look after it, after all the damage that's been done by the past generations. My sister, actually, Caroline Stanley, started a Nature for Health program. So she brings adults and children, and she's worked with a lot of schools, and they bring them out in nature and they teach them about nature. Because again, like anything, how can you expect a child to protect the environment if they don't understand about the environment? And that is walking through it, experiencing what's growing in the different seasons, the different types of trees, how one is helping the other, what's going to grow in certain areas, all of this. And of course, the children are out in this wonderland. When I do the mindfulness aspects of those walks, and with the adults, I bring them back to being children. And every time we walk through what might look like an archway, to me, it's a secret portal. And I make them make a wish going through it. And you can see some of the adults going, oh, this is ridiculous. But then they start laughing and they start having fun. And it's just stopping. And as you said, that sense of being part of nature, that we are not separate. And
Mm.
again, if we can feel that as being part of nature, we belong. And then we can connect to others by sharing that story of what we experienced in nature. And just as you said, the adventures that we had, you can share that with your peers. Maybe that'll encourage more of them to come out. But I think everything that you're doing, Siobhán, is just amazing. And that's why, again, I say why I wish that everyone had a Siobhán in their life. So I know you can't talk to everyone individually and every child individually, but through your program and through your book and through the books that are upcoming, I think that's a beautiful way. And I think your mother's saying to you and emphasizing that in your life is shining through every day for you now, Siobhán.
Oh, that's such a lovely thing to say. Thank you, Sharon. Sharon, I wonder, would you mind if I just read a little poem from one of the books?
I would love that.
I suppose I'm just there's the 10 books, and each book is based in a different season. So they experience the different seasons in the woods. But and each book has approximately the same number of paragraph or of chapters, 14 chapters in each book. But each book also, what's consistent across them all is they have a poem that the trees help the children to write, to create, kind of based on their experiences in that particular book. So this is a poem from one of them, and it might just give, I picked it because I thought it might just give you a flavor of what
Yeah.
the books are about. So here goes.
Thank you.
The trees are teasing us today, inviting me to come and play, and climb and swing and trip and run, luring me to have some fun. The trees are treating me today to a calming, captive nature display. Birds diving, dipping, gliding free. Maybe that's a part of me. Let them grow. Let them be. We need the trees, you and me. In the heart of the woods, we all grew so strong. With the trees, birds, and fairies, we all got along. Balancing branches, we came to know that effort and courage make spirits grow. The days we spent together, tough times we went through, laughter, tears, and lots of love, memories stick like glue. Those memories keep us warm inside whenever we're apart. The mind may fool us and forget, but never the heart.
Oh, Siobhán. I was smiling and oohing to myself, and oh, that is so beautiful, Siobhán. So beautiful.
Thank you.
Wow. There's so much in your conversation. I said again, I say this to many of my guests. We could talk for hours and hours about so many different avenues and ways and paths, but I think the information and you sharing your story and your passion about it is enough for people to go out and maybe first stop for a minute, look around them, where they are in their lives, who they're connecting to, who what they have to say to themselves, listening to themselves, but listening to other people and to stop and pause. And if there is a child or a young person in your house, maybe stop for a minute and see what their story is. And it
Mm.
doesn't have to be anything like your story, but just allowing them to express themselves. That could be a start.
I
Siobhán,
think,
you've shared so many jewels with us today. If people want to contact you, Siobhán, how can they do it?
yeah, so they can feel free to email me on Siobhan, Fitz, Siobhan at hotmail.com. Or if they Google me, I'd say they'll find me. Certainly if they Google the book Listen, How Child and Student Voice Can Change the World, they'll find me that way. I'm always delighted to have conversations with people and to chat back and forth via email or even by phone. So yeah, just reach out on social media. I'm on LinkedIn, on Instagram,
Instagram?
and Facebook with all my talk about going outside. But but you have to be nowadays. It's
Yeah.
huge benefit to being on it as well. I'm not on it all day long, but
No.
I'm there.
Again, it's putting ourselves out there, but again, it's showing what we are sharing with people. And as you said, we are showing up as we didn't show up on social media years ago because it wasn't there for us. So it's a new way even for us. But we're
Mm.
bringing what we've learned from our experiences. If people want to get your book, Siobhán, where can they get them?
Well, Um, the newest books will be available from outside the box when they're published. There will be a launch later this year. I'm hoping it'll be by the end of spring, maybe, or early summer. And then my book, Listen, How Child and Student Voice Can Change the World, is available from outside the box also, or from Routledge worldwide. And Let's Stand is available from forschools.ie. So for first, and it is for schools, for teachers, but yeah, so that's it.
Brilliant.
It's interesting. I was just going to say there, Sharon, when you said about when we're talking about social media and what social
Mhm.
media we're on, one thing I often tell the children is, isn't it interesting how we go on these social media sites and we share our stories? We
Mm.
always talk about the story. What's your story on Instagram? There's the story on Facebook. And what I use that as is a way of emphasizing to them that's the power of your story. So social media knows that it's all about story, but what's even more impactful is for you to be able to tell that in
Mm.
your own voice.
That is so true. And some of the highest ranking people on social media are storytellers.
Mm,
It's
mm,
not all through image and content, it's through their voices, through their stories, how they share, whether that is, they're athletes or they're selling products or they're a musician. It's about what they share through their voice. So, yeah,
absolutely.
if that was a thing, we could teach children to say, well, if you want to become a great storyteller, because a lot of people say, I just want to be famous, but for what?
Yeah, could be
What?
motivating.
Yeah, it could be. And I think that's brilliant. And again, I think conversations like this are about sharing our own stories, what we've learned, and how we want to help humanity to share their stories. And Siobhán, you're definitely doing that out in the world. So, yeah, thank you so much.
No, thank you, Sharon. Thanks for the opportunity. It's always a pleasure, as I said, to chat and looking forward to lots more chats.
Lovely. So that was Dr. Siobhan Keenan Fitzgerald. You can find her on LinkedIn, Facebook, and on Instagram. And Siobhan, you also did a 366-day thing, videos on communication for children. So you'll find that all over social media, which is a great thing to do, but a big commitment to do a daily post on communication for children. So Siobhan is out there. Please check out her TEDx talk as well, TEDx Galway in 2016, and you did one in Rathote in 2023, isn't that right,
That's
Siobhan,
right.
as
Yeah.
well?
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, it was for me, I think I'm a bit like my eldest. The listening for me is very powerful. because again, that feeling, that connection, that empathy, for me is really strong when I'm listening. That's obviously why I love conversations, Siobhan. But yeah, so go and check them out and all of her books. And as I said, if you need to contact her, it's fitzsiobhan@hotmail.com. Email her with any queries or just to tell her how amazing she was today on the Sharon Fitzmaurice podcast.
Thanks, Sharon.
So thank you to everybody for listening. If you feel this would benefit your friends, family, your colleagues, anybody in the world, please share it with them. That's what these conversations are about, is sharing the information, the lived experience and the wisdom that we've gathered along the years to help and support you. So until next time, take care of you.